With the Ironheart series already labeled as a major ratings disaster for both Marvel Studios and the Walt Disney Company, we have those like Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, and even Dominique Thorne heading into complete damage control to really take control of the situation, and so far that has worked to no avail. Well, this is exactly what's been going on now, to the point where Bob Iger and Kevin Feige are getting involved in a lot of drama with RDJ, Robert Downey Jr. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, the bigger question lies whether or not the backlash surrounding Ironheart is going to deeply and negatively impact the Fantastic Four film. That's really up for, a lot of questions right now, but one thing is for certain is that this is really putting a nail in the coffin. Maybe not the final nail, but a nail in the coffin for Disney Plus Marvel-oriented shows out there, and people are just growingly losing interest at this point, kind of like what happened with Star Wars time and time again. Now, focusing on the whole situation between Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, and RDJ and exactly what's going on here in the midst of the ratings disaster, well, it only gets worse for Marvel at this point, because you guys may recall when they forced Robert Downey Jr., they made a deal with him to take part in the press tour to prop up Riri Williams, played by Dominique Thorne, on multiple talk show programs out there, a lot of which were, of course, affiliated with Disney. We'll talk more about that down the road. However, this is where it gets really intense, because we know that Robert Downey Jr. is a very busy man right now. He is heavily involved with Avengers Doomsday and among other projects as well. But we know one thing for certain is that he is beginning to actually get very annoyed about the whole process here. Now, with the Ironheart ratings disaster only creating more panic for those at Marvel and Disney on whether or not this backlash will impact the performance of Fantastic Four, one major development that is now active involves drama surrounding Robert Downey Jr. in the midst of the Ironheart ratings nightmare. Now, already Robert Downey Jr. is enraged with both Disney and Marvel, as well as Marvel fans. Already Bob Iger and Kevin Feige held a recent emergency call/meeting that included Robert Downey Jr. remotely, where they were pressuring him to make a wide statement to Marvel fans to stop criticizing Riri Williams, and to also address the ongoing issues with sexism and misogyny and those against DEI. Now, RDJ reportedly had a major fit with both Kevin and Bob after they were trying to twist his arm into becoming a mouthpiece, essentially, for, of course, the Riri Williams backlash, and defender of the Ironheart series, where Downey Jr. pointed out to both Marvel and Disney that this could not only ruin his reputation, but also caused him fans, and he's against making those statements. However, both Bob and Kevin informed him that taking part in these types of statements and the press tour for Ironheart is built into his very expensive contract for the future of the MCU, mostly related to the return in Avengers Doomsday. RDJ is already challenging both Bob Iger and Kevin Feige that he will only make statements defending Ironheart and Riri Williams if it avoids arguments about DEI. Already Bob and Kevin refused, and they are forcing him to make statements to go against Marvel fans that are opposed to the Riri Williams character. Now, RDJ is also very annoyed with Marvel and Disney after they initially forced him to do PR and become a part of the press tour, since it was built into his contract for Doomsday, with the show promised to be a ratings success if he was involved in the press tour. Those promises obviously fell flat, and it upset Downey Jr. to the point that he is now having an all-out argument and defensive conversation with Iger and Feige. Now, both Bob Iger and Kevin Feige are growing very annoyed and impatient with RDJ's attitude behind the scenes in the midst of the Ironheart ratings disaster. Now, guys, let me say one thing about this. Now, the minute that RDJ started to go on talk shows and propping up Riri Williams, it really did feel very phony and inauthentic now, didn't it? It felt a little forced. It felt a little, like it was just pushed by Disney to kind of make the ratings better, and we'll get more into that in just a second as to why Robert Downey Jr. is also upset with Disney and Marvel based on what they did with the press tour. Now, one thing is for certain is that this show, based on episodes 1 through 3, a lot of Marvel fans are rejecting this thing, and it's not looking like it's going to improve for episodes 4, 5, and 6 based on the leaks and everything else going on with the main villain reveal. We talked about this. Spoiler, mute this video for like 10 seconds if you want to. Mephisto does actually appear in the final episodes of Ironheart, played by Sacha Baron Cohen. And a lot of people are just up in arms over that, because why affiliate that character with this show, of all shows, or of all projects Marvel, is beyond a lot of Marvel fans right now. They're very mind-boggled. However, moving onwards, they have also been pressuring him to actually hop on the press tour again to make wide statements that the show is a whopping success, when in reality it isn't, and RDJ argued that he doesn't want to lie to his fans, especially with Doomsday on the horizon, coming up in May of 2026. In addition to all of this, both Kevin and Bob aren't backing down, and they are desperately trying to work out a deal, even if it's a financial deal, to get more involved in the Ironheart press tour and damage control efforts, and it's creating serious tensions between himself and those high up at Marvel, and Disney as well. Now look, one thing is for sure is that Disney promised him that if you got involved, that this would be a rating success. That turned out to be quite the opposite, and that's another reason why Robert Downey Jr. is very much annoyed, very much, getting, very frustrated with Disney and Marvel at this point when it comes to the Ironheart press tour. And again, this press tour so far, it is very abysmal. It's one of the worst ones out there, because they were really trying to compare Riri Williams to Tony Stark as better than Tony Stark, pretty much moving on from Tony and being the new Tony Stark, being the new Iron Man, so to speak, and that really backfired as well. So this is not to say that RDJ is against Riri or Ironheart per se, but he's very upset with the false promises made by Disney, especially by Marvel and Kevin Feige. Now, RDJ felt betrayed with a promised rating success for Ironheart when he was promised it would steer the series in the right direction with his appearance on talk shows and other programs to show love to Dominique Thorne, who plays Riri Williams, and all of this backfired, and RDJ feels like he was manipulated by the Disney company. And you know what? I'm beginning to question now, looking back in 2022, I'm really beginning to wonder if something very similar happened with Ewan McGregor for the Kenobi series, where he had to go against Star Wars fans, and, he had to actually call out quote-unquote sexism and misogyny and all this nonsense, right? Whether or not that was actually coming from Ewan's beliefs, or if he was forced by Disney, forced by Disney per se, and Lucasfilm, that's really an interesting angle here when you're looking at what's going on with RDJ. Now, one thing about RDJ is that, look, whether or not he's going to knock it out of the park by playing Doomsday, of course, by playing in Doomsday as Doctor Doom, is going to be very interesting, right? We all know that there's a split audience there. Some people feel it's a little bit desperate by Marvel that they're using RDJ as Doctor Doom. Some people feel that it should have been someone like, for example, Cillian Murphy, right? A new original actor to play Doctor Doom, instead of just using Robert Downey Jr. again. And whether or not that's going to take away the experience because you're familiar with him as Tony Stark, that's also another angle. But overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about the whole RDJ drama over at Disney and Marvel, and whether or not those bold statements are going to come to life is going to be a very interesting turn of events. Overall, guys, I would like to hear what your overall stance is on RDJ in general, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.